Hi, everyone. I can see some folks joining. We're going to give folks just a few minutes before we get started. Thanks again for being here. And as we let everyone trickle in, I do want to go over a couple quick reminders for everyone. My name is Max 13. I'm from your Northwestern Alumni Association. We're so happy to have Gina Morgano here for this webinar. And before we begin, I'm going to go over a quick few housekeeping items. If you have any questions now or during the presentation that you'd like to ask, please feel free to use the Ask Your Question box on the bottom of your webinar dashboard. Just type in the question and hit send. We'll keep an eye on those and we'll try to ask as many as possible at the end of the presentation. We'll also have use of the chat available, so if there's any speaking prompts, you can put your responses in there. If you do have any technical issues now or during the webinar, please just close the Zoom window and restart using the same registration link or refresh your browser if that's the way that you're viewing this. Most issues are Wi-Fi related and can be resolved by just refreshing the page. And finally, a link to the recording of this webinar and a post-event survey will be sent to all of our registrants after the talk. We always, of course, appreciate your feedback. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce Gina Morgano. She is a professional singer, TEDx speaker, and vocal confidence coach who believes that every voice matters. Blending her expertise as a performer with a holistic approach to the voice, she helps leaders, teams, and individuals express themselves with courage and communicate with confidence. A bachelor's graduate of Northwestern University and a master's graduate of Northwestern and the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, Morgano is a Major League National Anthem singer and has performed at Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, and other venues across the United States. She maintains a private voice studio, hosts the Voice Space podcast, and leads keynotes, workshops, and coaching sessions nationwide, helping every client to open, share, and amplify their voice. Gina, thanks so much. It's great to see you. Take it away.
Thanks for having me, Max. And thank you to everyone who is tuning in person, live, or on the replay. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Welcome to Amplify Your Impact, how strong communicators become stronger leaders. Before we get started, I would love to know a little bit about you. So please go ahead and use the chat. Let me know where you're located, why you're tuning in today. Throughout this, I'll be asking you to use the chat if you are able. I'll look at as much as I can, and if I don't get to something, then hopefully I can address it after. Max is in Milwaukee. All right. Well, we'll get going. I know sometimes it's hard to use the chat when you're on these. You might be multitasking or whatever. All right. So when it comes to amplifying your impact, I'm curious what making an impact means to you. If you were to summarize it in one sentence, what does it mean to make an impact? And then why does amplifying your impact matter to you personally? Why is it important to you? All right, we have someone from Washington. That's awesome. Another communications person. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how impactful do you currently feel in your life and work? I know, at least for me, I always feel like I could be making more of an impact. There's always more I want to do, more ways that I want to make a difference. So this is just a way to kind of frame our day and get you thinking about what it means to you to make an impact and the kind of impact that you would like to make in your life and in your career. If you want to amplify your impact as a leader, you must become a stronger communicator. I truly believe that it all comes down to communication. Communication is the way that we relate and interact with one another. So if we want to improve our leadership, if we want to make a greater impact, then we need to learn how to communicate better. Your creative voice is the most important leadership tool that you have. I love this. Impact equals inspiring people to think or act in a new way. And we'll definitely talk about inspiration in just a little bit. So I'm also curious if any of you are Swifties. I am. I love the new The Life of a Showgirl album. And I saw my stepsister the other night for dinner, and I don't get to see her that often. And she came to dinner with a present for me. She said, I made this for you. And it was a friendship bracelet. If you don't know, Taylor Swift is known for friendship bracelets. Her fans wear friendship bracelets and they trade friendship bracelets and they make them and bring them to her concerts. So my stepsister was making friendship bracelets for her friends, and she brought me one at dinner, and she said, but yours is a little different. I wrote something different on yours. Yours says showgirl because you are a showgirl. And I was so excited by that because I am a performer, I'm a showgirl, and it was so thoughtful of her. And in that moment, with that small little gesture and that gift and saying, I made this for you, she inspired me. Last night, I was decorating my pumpkin for Halloween, and I decided to make my pumpkin the life of a showgirl inspired pumpkin. So I used the album cover as inspiration. And I don't think I would have come up with that idea if my stepsister hadn't given me the bracelet. She modeled generosity to me. After meeting her for dinner and her giving me that gift, then I thought of something that I could invite her to. She projected her skills, her creativity. She expanded her energy by giving me that gift. And she aligned with her values and her skills. She engaged in her creativity and her values of doing kind things for people. And she connected with me. She found something that was very specific to me, the fact that I am a showgirl, that related to her love of Taylor Swift, and found that connection point. And ultimately, she transformed me because all week I've had a little more pep in my step, not only wearing my friendship bracelet, but reminding myself of my identity as a showgirl. I am a showgirl. And her reminding me of that gave me a little bit more confidence. It reminded me of who I am. And so that really small gesture of making friendship bracelets and saying, I made one for you, her using her creative voice in service of me had a huge impact, an impact that she doesn't even know about. So I'd like to go back a little bit and share some more of my story to let you know how I got here. And it's kind of going with that showgirl theme in that I started out as a performer and I still perform. I grew up playing instruments and I went to Northwestern as a vocal performance major. I was in the musical theater program and I was very hard on myself. I was working really hard, but I was being very, very critical of my voice and my progress. And I was really down on myself. I saw all of my peers excelling and improving. And week after week, I would go into my voice lessons and I would just be so sad. And my voice teacher looked at me one day and said, I hope you like your voice. And that shook me to the core because I was at school to improve my voice. I was there to train my voice. I was there to get better at using my voice. The thought of liking my voice didn't even cross my mind. And then I had this huge aha. I realized that I was there with the intention of having people ultimately pay good money to hear me sing. And I thought, well, how could I ask other people to pay to hear me sing? How could I want other people to like my voice if I didn't like my voice? And so I realized that I had to make a change. I had to learn how to love my voice, or else I needed to change my career path altogether. And so as I slowly learned how to like, appreciate, and eventually love my voice, I started taking those skills that I learned and helping other people to love their voice. So that took me down the road of being a vocal confidence coach. And the one thing that I realized is that everybody comes to me wanting to have greater vocal confidence. People want to feel more comfortable public speaking. People want to sing higher and louder. And yet, confidence is an outcome. Confidence is a result. Courage is the prerequisite to confidence. And so as I started coaching vocal confidence, eventually I had the opportunity to do a TEDx talk at Point Park University. The theme of the conference was renewal, and my talk is called Renewing Your Voice from the Inside Out. Your voice matters. And it dawned on me that at the heart of all of my work, whether I am singing or coaching or speaking, my dream is to create a culture where every voice matters. Because I truly believe that we would have a much better world if everyone felt that their voice mattered and if everyone felt heard. So going back to my stepsister giving me the showgirl friendship bracelet, that was a small way of her reminding me that my voice mattered. And in turn, I was reminded that her voice mattered. So when we talk about impactful communication, I'm curious what you think of when someone communicates powerfully. What makes them stand out? What does strong communication look or feel like in your organization, your community, your relationships? I mentioned some of the things that my stepsister demonstrated to me, and it's what I call the impact framework. I is inspire, M is model, P is project, A is align, C is connect, and T is transform. So we start with inspire. In order to lead with your voice, I know that's what Frank said in the comments, is impact equals inspiring. You have to inspire. So you can think about the leaders who inspire you. Maybe they are other artists, maybe they are political figures or creatives. Maybe they're people in your family. And I'm curious what inspiration means to you. But while you think on that, and feel free to put it in the chat, I'm going to talk about the origins of the word inspiration. Inspiration actually means inhalation, drawing air into the lungs, in spirit. Using your voice is a sign of life. When you were born, the very first thing that you did was cry. When a baby is born, the nurses and the doctors and the parents want to hear that cry. That cry is a sign of life. And the reason they're listening for the cry is because babies breathe before they cry. In order to cry, you have to breathe. And singers breathe before they make a sound. Inspiration begins on the inhalation. Inspiration is the moment before expression. As singers and actors, we're taught to have the thought and then express it. If you see an actor who's maybe not so great, they're probably not having that moment of inspiration before they express. And singers know that the quality of the breath matters. The quality of the inhalation affects the sound. It affects the expression. So leadership starts with the breath. The state of your nervous system sets the emotional tone for your message and for the state of everyone around you. I'm sure we've all had those moments when we were stressed or anxious and our breath got high. Maybe we were rushing and running late, and that energy flowed out of us And it can be very contagious and infectious. And vice versa. Maybe we can think of a time when either we were calm or we had a calming presence, and that breath helped to settle us down. So here are a few ways that you can inspire. You can take a breath. You can regulate before you communicate. Calm, expansive breath signals that it is safe to express and connect. You can set your intention, paint a clear vision, and share your point of view. That's that moment of the inhalation. You are setting the intention. And as you express, you want to get buy-in. You want to have people imagine what could be and share your own perspective. Yes, I love this in the comments. Often strong, effective communication comes out of personal experience, an authentic story or perspective. And then we can also inspire by caring for our people. I love this quote by Edith Wharton. It says, "There are two ways of spreading light, to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it." We can be the light, we can be the inspiration for others, but also we can reflect the light in others back to them. So I have some exercises for you throughout this presentation, and I kind of structured them like a vocal warm-up. These are some exercises that I do myself and that I do with my clients and my students. I also have some journaling prompts, and there's not really going to be time to do all the journaling here, but as we go along, feel free to enter your comments into the chat, or you can go back and reflect on them longer later. So for this first breathing exercise, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and sit tall. Keep your palms face up on your thighs. And I'm going to guide you through this breathing meditation reflection process. And I start all of my lessons with something similar. So just keep breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And a singer's breath is low, slow, and through the nose. We often breathe through our mouths, and sometimes we have to breathe through our mouths. However, a nasal breath is preferred. I could do a whole other webinar on the benefits of nasal breathing, but in short, it filters allergens and bacteria out of the air, it hydrates the air, and it activates the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. It helps to calm us. It helps to take us out of fight or flight. So throughout this, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, sitting tall, low, slow through the nose. And I have these affirmation cards by a company called Music Mindfully. And I typically have students pull a card, but I pulled these two for today. The first one says, "You are inspired. You feel so alive and know you are exactly where you are supposed to be. You use your excitement and momentum to propel you forwards. You are inspired." And the second one says, "You are inspiring. With your music, you are inspiring others and impacting lives. By sharing your gifts, you are making the world a better place. You are inspiring." And if music doesn't resonate, you can say, "With your voice, you are inspiring others and impacting lives." And just as you're breathing, think about what your typical breath energy feels like and what your breathing feels like when you're inspired. What energy do you want to offer when communicating? Do you want to give off a calm energy, a joyful energy, excited, warm? What is the breath energy of your inspirational voice? And the next time that you are feeling a little frazzled, perhaps you can go back to that. Go back to the breath and set an intention for your inspirational voice. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So first we inspire, and then we model. All of the people who inspire you model ways of having, doing, and being. They model things that you want or hope to emulate, or perhaps don't want to emulate. If inspiration is the spark, modeling is the flame that keeps the candle burning. In singing, you must sing with the accompaniment. However, if you listen for the accompaniment, if you wait for it, you will be late. Max and I were actually just talking before this webinar about national anthems and singing them in stadiums with the sound delay. If you wait to hear your voice come back to you, then you end up slowing down and slowing down more and slowing down more. And suddenly you are very far behind. I sing in the Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh. I'm currently in Pittsburgh, and we perform with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, and we are behind the orchestra. So we're very far away from the conductor and the audience, and we're trained to follow the conductor's hands and baton, because if we wait to hear the sound of the orchestra, to be with the orchestra based on the sound, we will be late, we will be behind. And in leadership, as in music, if you wait to respond instead of taking initiative, you will always be late. You must be on top of the beat. You are the heartbeat. You must set the tempo. Your pulse serves as the metronome for others to follow. A metronome in music, it used to be a device that would tick, tick, tick. And now we have them on our phones, so we can just say how many beats per minute we want to hear, and then we'll hear the pulse, the beep on our phones. But it's something that musicians practice with so that we can stay in time, so that we don't rush ahead or get behind the beat. And as a leader, you are the example. You are the model that other people are going to follow. So remember that you are the heartbeat. What are some things that we can model? How can we model? One thing is to care for your instrument. This is like putting your oxygen mask on first. As I was starting to take voice lessons in high school, I learned very quickly that I needed to care for my instrument. I was a cheerleader and I was screaming and I was running into vocal fatigue and other issues. A healthy voice is a leadership asset. You can't lead if you don't take care of yourself. And then you have to know when to lead and when to follow. Know what is and isn't yours to carry. I sing in choirs a lot, and we have 4 main voice parts: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. And oftentimes the sopranos have the main melody, but sometimes other voice parts have it. And you have to know when it's your turn to sing out, and then it's when it is your turn to accompany and be the harmony. Same with even performing with a pianist. Sometimes the pianist takes over, and sometimes the piano is backing up the vocalist. And that's really the way it is with everything. We are all leaders in our own way. So you have to know when it's your turn to lead and when it is somebody else's turn. And you can model that. And then we also want to count the rests. Rests are an integral part of the music. They're not separate from the music. We have to make space for other voices to be heard. So in that choir situation, maybe the sopranos are used to singing the melody, but now the tenors have the melody. If the sopranos keep singing at the same volume as they were before, they're going to overpower the tenors. They have to make space for the tenors to be heard. Oftentimes, my singing clients will come into lessons and they will learn their part. They'll learn the verses and the choruses of the song, but they won't know when to come in. They won't know when they start singing. They won't know how long the musical interlude is between the verses for them to come back in, because they didn't count the rests. So this goes back to caring for your instrument and knowing when to lead and when to follow. You have to count the rests and make them a part of the music, a part of what you are modeling. So when we model strong communication, one thing that I know as a singer is that it is about expansion and presence. So I'd like for you to try this. Sit really slouched, make yourself as small as possible and say your name. I am Gina Morgano. And then make yourself as large as possible and say your name. I am Gina Morgano. And notice the difference. When you are open and expansive and you take that low, slow inhalation, it's going to impact the sound. You didn't have to do anything with your voice. There was a change. If anybody did that, go ahead and write in the chat what you noticed. And then you can journal on this later, but also this might be something to journal on right now in the chat. What kind of communication would make this session most meaningful for you? And how could you more courageously model the communication that you desire from others? So by that, I mean, if you think it would be helpful to have more Q&A, then ask questions. If you think it would be helpful to have more personal stories, share your personal stories. If you think it would be helpful to just have more conversation going, get the conversation going. You be the leader. You model the behavior that you would like to see. Oh, that's awesome. I feel like I just scored the best goal ever making the big arms pose. Felt very bold. Yes. And that was simply by expanding your body. You didn't have to think, oh, I feel really confident. By doing the action, it made you feel more confident. Okay, so we inspire, we model, and then we project. An interesting thing that I learned as a singer is that a small voice can carry and a large voice can be drowned out. And that is counterintuitive to what we normally think. So there could be someone singing really, really loudly next to me, and their voice will not be heard out into the hall. And then there could be somebody else who has a lovely, smallish voice, and yet that voice projects, that voice carries. And there are reasons for this. One of them being that we hear our voice through our bone conduction, and other people hear our voice through the air conduction, and then also through technology. So you're hearing my voice through my computer speakers, through your speakers. So things get lost in translation. And the way that you hear yourself is never the way that other people hear you. So you are never an accurate judge of your own sound. This is one of the reasons that people also don't like to hear their voice on like an old school voicemail, or if you listen back to a recording of yourself, we never sound the way that we think we do. And so we have to remember that projection is for the audience's benefit, not for the pleasure of our own ears. That loud person thinks that they sound amazing. They think they're sounding, really bold and they're projecting well, but they're not, because they're thinking about how they hear their sound, not how other people hear their sound. And so singers learn to rely on what it feels like, not on what it sounds like. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but there are bodily sensations that we learn to tune into, and we get feedback from that. And then also outside ears are necessary. So we'll talk more about feedback, but we can't judge our own sound. So sometimes we do need a coach or a mentor, somebody with outside ears to help us get our message across in a stronger way. And then remember that your presence is your projection. People not only hear your voice, but they also feel your energy. The voice is literally vibration. We are sending sound waves out into the air. We are sending resonance, vibrations from our body out into the air, into somebody else's ears so that they feel the vibrations. So when someone says they are moved, they are physically moved. Resonance is not the same as volume. Okay, how can you project? You can expand your energy like we did with that exercise. It's about taking up space and not dominating. It's about physical, emotional, and vocal presence that makes you magnetic, not just, shoving your ideas and your authority and being the loudest voice in the room. It's about directing your attention, focusing on your people and not on yourself and your inner critic. So when we talked about inspiration, we talked about setting the intention. But once you have that attention, once you have that intention, you have to Direct and focus your attention. Attention is external. And then you have to act with courage. We talked about how courage comes before confidence. Your willingness to take a risk invites other people to do the same. So I'd like to give you a little vocal exercise to help you maximize your resonance, to learn how to project your voice better. So just hum, any pitch, and just keep humming. I'm going to guide you through this. So I want you to release your jaw, so we're not having really tight lips, but and try to sustain a hum. So and take breaths when you need to, but try to think long phrases. And as you do that, really think of expanding the space inside your head. And try to feel vibrations. You might feel them in your cheekbones. You might feel them a little bit in your eyes or your forehead, but really by your nose. See if you can maximize that vibration, because a sound that has those vibrations optimized is going to project a lot better. And then something for you to journal on. What do you want people to feel with your presence? How well do you vocally and physically embody that? Where could you better project? Where could you better focus, expand, open, and make space in order to maximize your resonance? And that might be a physical thing, your vocal projection, your vocal resonance, or it might be a metaphorical thing. So we inspire, we model, we project, and we align. Part of me wishes that align came earlier in the word impact, because we're kind of aligning at the beginning too with our breath. But I also like that it comes now, because we must constantly realign. We must check in with our alignment over and over and over again. Great vocal technique begins with alignment. When you're out of alignment, physically or metaphorically, communication feels strained. Some of you shared in the chat how you felt when you expanded your body. I'm curious what it felt like when you were tight. What did it feel like when you were making yourself small? In singing, alignment is a clear pathway for your body, breath, and sound to work in coordination. It's like a tube of air. You want that tube to be as straight as possible so the breath has the clearest, most efficient pathway. When we were all contorted, right, that breath has to navigate a maze. In leadership, alignment means that your words, actions, and values are in harmony. True leadership doesn't come from externally pushing your authority, right? That is like turning up the volume. But it comes from internal alignment, being in integrity with your purpose. When your voice aligns with your values, you don't just speak, you serve. And when we talk about amplifying your impact as a leader, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to magnify our ability to serve, to amplify, to make larger, to expand the amount of people that we can serve, the ways that we can serve. So how do we align? We start with the body. We acknowledge our physical sensations. Behavior shifts mindset, not the other way around. So this is really important. So often we think that it's our thoughts that create the behavior. And in a way, that's true. It is circular. But as you saw, if you shift the behavior, if you shift your physical action, then the thoughts change. So often clients will come to me and think that they need to be more confident. They think that they need to feel good about getting up on stage and using their voice in front of all these people. And they shame themselves for being nervous. And they think, well, I need to outthink this. I somehow need to change my mindset so that I can think differently. And there are tools for that, sure. But there are also tools for training the body because the body is strong. And in many ways, your muscle memory, your body is stronger than your mindset. So if you can train the body, it will actually help you to overcome the thoughts. So this is why when I train communication, whether it's singing or speaking, we do all sorts of physical exercises, stretching exercises, mobility exercises, vocal exercises, because we're training the body, we're training the muscle memory, regardless of the thoughts. Regardless if you feel like you can or can't do something, your body will show you what you're capable of. And then when you align, you also have to know your role and understand where your part fits in the harmony. So I mentioned the choir example of different voice parts having the melody. But you also have to know, do you have the main note of the chord? Do you have a supporting note? Where does your part fit? So often, singing students will come to me and they will know their part inside and out, but they won't know the world around them. They won't know everybody else's part. And I think that applies to everything. To really master your instrument, to master your skill, to master your role, you have to not only know your part, but you have to know where it fits in the harmony, where it fits in the larger structure. What is happening around you? So when I memorize lines as an actor, I'm not only memorizing my lines, I'm memorizing my cue lines. I have to know what other people say so that I know when to come in. And the other way to align is to listen louder than you sing. Prioritize understanding over being heard. Again, this goes back to resonance, not volume. In order to align with someone, we have to attune to them. We have to listen. It's about helping people to feel heard. And we can do this with ourselves as well. We can align with ourselves. So in singing, one of the main things we want to align is our vowels. And we have the 5 main vowels, E, A, I, O, U. So if you feel courageous, I would love for you to sing these vowels on one pitch like this. E, A, O. And when you do that, you might notice that the vowels go in and out of alignment. So you might have E, A, O, right? They weren't really lined up. So see if you can try to focus those vowels so that they all feel in alignment. They all feel like they're coming from a similar place. E, A, O. And another thing you can do, you can journal on this. Sit or stand tall, place your hands on your heart, take that singer's breath. Ask yourself what truly matters today. What is one small step that you can take today toward greater alignment? All right. I'd love to check in with you, see how you're doing. We have 2 more letters of impact to go, but feel free to write anything in the chat if you have any thoughts or questions, comments. So we inspire, we model, we project, we align, and we connect. Hi, Sarah. It's so good to see you. Thanks for being here. Connection is the heart of communication. That's what it's all about. Realizing I am actually a worse singer than I remembered. Well, remember that you cannot judge your own sound. You're probably a much better singer than you think. Connection is not about performance. It's about relationship. So using that example, right, we judge our sound. It's like, I like how I sound. I don't like how I sound. I'm a good singer. I'm a bad singer. I'm a great public speaker. I'm a horrible public speaker. But connection is not about performance. The act of using our voice, the act of communicating is about relationship. It's about serving. It's not about how we sound. It doesn't matter how we sound. We could be the best singer in the world or the worst singer in the world. What matters is, are we connecting? Are we getting our message across? Are we making an impact and making a difference? So we sing to express, not impress. And that is one of those lessons that I feel like I have to keep reminding myself of on the daily, because we want to sound good. We want to impress. I remember being in college and I just wanted to impress. I wanted to sing the most difficult song I could sing so everyone would be so impressed with my skills and my abilities. But that's not what it's about. In music, connection happens through shared frequencies, the literal vibrations that are emitted from one person and felt by another. In leadership, empathy, compassion, and vulnerability are at the heart of connection. It doesn't matter how you sound. I can think of times when I was so upset with the way that I performed, with the way I sounded. I was out of tune and I messed up my timing and my vowels were not in alignment. All of those things. And I would be really hard on myself. And then someone would come up to me and let me know how my music connected with them and how much it impacted them in a positive way. It doesn't matter if you have the perfect words or if you sound the best way that you are in a great day. All that really matters is, are you connecting? And connection springs from a spirit of care, understanding, and generosity. My stepsister's Showgirl Taylor Swift friendship bracelet was her way of connecting with me. It didn't matter. I love the bracelet, but it didn't matter how beautiful the bracelet was. It was about the act of communicating and connecting. So how can we connect? Here are a few ideas. We can stay curious. Curiosity invites new ideas and innovation. Ask questions. Be interested rather than being interesting. That's the old cliche. Normalize feedback. Make feedback a regular practice, not a scary event. And this is one that I think most people could work on. I feel really fortunate being in the arts that feedback was normalized. As long as I can remember, I was getting feedback every single week in my lessons and every week in my coachings and in my rehearsals. I'm constantly getting feedback. And yes, sometimes this can cause you to develop some perfectionism and feelings of not being enough. It's like, am I ever going to get it right? But we also want to normalize positive feedback as well. So there's a balance. And I could do a whole workshop on feedback because it's so important. And there are ways of giving and receiving feedback that are very effective and very helpful. But the point that I want to leave you with is to make it a regular practice and not a scary event. I remember that I worked retail for a short time and I had my annual review and I went in and I chatted with my boss and I left. And then there was somebody standing outside to go in and that person was shaking. They were so nervous. And I realized they were nervous because they simply weren't used to these feedback conversations. It wasn't something that happened every day for them. This was a once a year event, not a normal part of everyday conversation. And then we can connect by sharing our story. Vulnerability creates trust. Frank said in the chat at the beginning about sharing your point of view, your experience. When I was preparing my TEDx talk, I had all of these quotations and statistics, and I was referencing books and experts. And I went to my coach, and she said, your talk on The Voice needs more of your voice in it. I was leaving out my own story. You know, when we talk about communication and using our voice and creativity, and I mentioned creativity is our best leadership tool, our creative voice. And that's for two reasons. One, as humans, our imagination is what sets us apart. So spiders can spin a spider web, they can create, But human beings are the ones who have the imagination. They can envision something before it happens and then bring it to life. And now we're living in the world of AI. You think, well, AI is creative. AI can brainstorm like crazy and come up with all these ideas I would not have thought of. I love AI. I use it all the time for things. However, AI will never have your lived experience because your body, your being will always be one step ahead. So yes, you can feed it with your experience, your thoughts, your feelings, your story, what happened. The more you tell it, the more it will know. And it can connect those dots backwards. But it will never be living with you in the moment, having your thoughts and your physical sensations, your feelings as you are having them. And so by sharing your story, by being vulnerable, by being present, it is the most human way that we can connect. Okay. So here's a little vocal exercise for connection. I'd like for you to hiss like a snake. And I want you to hiss for as long as you possibly can. Take breaths when you need to. And as you hiss, be mindful that you are releasing your neck and throat muscles. So we're not clenching, but we're nice and expansive, nice and calm. And I want you to up the intensity on that hiss. So it's not a really kind of flowy hiss. It's a very excited, energized hiss. And I want you to notice what you feel in your torso, in your abdominals, in your back, in your lats. Go ahead and post in the chat if you notice anything happening. So in singing, we work on our breath support. It's our intra-abdominal air pressure. And support, my dog noticed the intense hiss. Muscles are engaged, yes. In singing, when we talk about support, we talk about the breath support. We're talking about an Italian term called appoggio, which comes from the bel canto vocal technique tradition. And appoggio means to lean. So I love that tie-in of to support means to lean. It means to care, to hold up. So when we are connecting our breath and our voice by engaging our muscles. Obviously, that hiss is supposed to simulate, when you sing on words and vowels, that same feeling of support and muscular activity and engagement. But we are supporting the sound, we are supporting the breath, we are supporting our bodies, and we are supporting each other. So another exercise you can do if you feel like it is to follow your curiosity. Offer feedback in the chat, offer questions in the chat. Say, what if you were to? Or, how, why? And then a journaling question for you is to think of a time that you instantly connected or struggled to connect with someone. Can you pinpoint why? Okay, we have one more letter. Transform. So we inspire, we model, we project, we align, we connect, and we transform. Our culture is our legacy. What kind of cultural legacy are you creating through your communication? In singing, transformation happens when the individual technique disappears and universal truth takes over. I had a Northwestern journalism professor who said that every story came down to the great universal truths. Every story was about love versus hate, life versus death, war versus peace. Every story had this struggle, these universal truths that we can all relate to. And so when I'm telling a story, it's about touching on these universal truths that we all understand, we all feel. And in leadership, transformation occurs when your message becomes your movement, revealing more of who you've always been and already are. Your message becomes your movement because you're going to bring people on board to your movement. There is motion in your communication. And transformation isn't about changing everything. It's about starting a ripple that keeps moving. It's about putting people and ideas into motion. Communication becomes legacy through transformation, through change, through motion. So how do we transform? We clarify the arc. We take people on a journey. When I'm learning a song, I identify where the character is starting and where the character ends up. So maybe the character is starting off feeling kind of down on their luck, and by the end of the song, they are feeling hopeful and inspired. And we take people along on that journey. So we support a movement. We expect change. So often in leadership, we can become married to the status quo, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But in order to lead, in order to transform, in order to make an impact, we have to expect change. We have to celebrate motion, celebrate momentum, celebrate new voices coming into the conversation. And then we have to let it go, release control, embrace what becomes. And this is the hardest thing as a singer. Once that sound leaves your mouth, you have no control over it. So like Elsa, you have to let it go. You can take a low, slow inhalation through your nose. You can take that singer's breath. You can set your intention. You can create the space and be aligned and do your best to project. All those things. You can model courage, everything. But you can't control what comes out. And you certainly cannot control how your voice is received. And that is very hard to take, but we have to let it go. So go ahead and shut your eyes and imagine your voice as a drop in water. Every sound, word, and phrase creates a ripple effect. Picture the waves traveling outward, impacting people you may never meet. Go ahead, take that low singer's breath, low, slow, in through the nose, and let out a sigh or a siren. Oh, you can do it again. Open your mouth, let go of the old air, and breathe in the new. And then something to journal on is what's one transformation you hope to create through your voice. This could be in your team, in your community, or in yourself. And how can you be the catalyst for a ripple effect of positive change? So again, here's the impact framework. Inspire, model, project, align, connect, and transform. If you want to amplify your impact as a leader, you must become a stronger communicator. And when you communicate with impact, you not only amplify your results and become a stronger leader, but you better serve your people. I have a free gift for you, which is my vocal confidence pep talk. And I know this will come out in the email that comes out after this. But here it is if anyone's watching on replay or doesn't get the email. And this is a guided meditation. I touch on the impact framework a little bit throughout, and I also add in some other ideas. But if you have a difficult conversation coming up, if you have to pitch something, or you have a big presentation or a performance, some high stakes way that you are going to use your voice, a way that you are going to use your voice that's meaningful to you, that you want to make an impact. And if you're feeling a little hesitant or doubtful, or you feel the imposter syndrome coming on, this is a 7-minute vocal confidence pep talk that you can listen to that I hope you will find helpful. I'd love to continue the conversation with you. I mentioned, other webinars and talks of interest to me, anything on the voice. I love doing keynotes, workshops, podcasts, panels. If you want coaching as a singer, as a speaker, and then of course I do a lot of performing. And you can get a hold of me. You can email me at any time. You can find me on my website. You can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. My podcast is the Voice Space Podcast. It does tend to be a bit more specific to singers, but a lot of the things that we talk about apply to using your voice in general. And then I have a Substack, and the podcast is hosted on that Substack as well. It's called The Voice Chronicle. And I just want to remind you that your voice matters. someone needs to hear exactly what you have to say. So I hope that this encouraged you to use your voice and to trust that if you use it and you share your story, use it with heart, you will make a positive impact. Thank you for spending your time here today. Thank you, Max and the Northwestern Alumni Association, for having me. We can have a few minutes for questions, and I hope you have a beautiful day.
Gina, thank you so much. This was phenomenal. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, your questions, and comments. We've got a couple minutes here at the end. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A box. I just want to say I really enjoyed the breath exercises. It's funny because I'm off camera and I'm just like and I'm doing all the different things, and you really do it feels very different. So I appreciate you giving us these really physical reminders of how to reset ourselves. I think that that's very much needed.
You're welcome.
It was really
Absolutely.
good.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna leave. I've got a question for you, but I'm gonna let everyone have a couple moments if they want to pop any in the chat or the Q&A first. Actually, I think. Oh yeah, we do have a question here. Okay. A question from Frank. Anything you do to start your day or prep your voice for action? Great question.
Oh, I love that. So I am a huge proponent of warming up in the shower. I like to warm up in the shower and warm up in my car. And I think the important thing to remember is the way I guided you through this today is kind of how I warm myself up. Obviously, it's a lot more detailed and involved, but I start with the breath. I start with setting my intention. I start with physicalizing, opening my body, expanding my body. And then I add on the sound. It's really easy to, think, oh, I have to have this huge resonant sound right away. And that's not the case. I very much gently ease into it. Those sound like safe spaces. Yes. And you know what? When I was in college and even living in New York with roommates, it was really hard to practice to use my voice because you become self-conscious of other people hearing you. You don't want to disturb people. And yet things like doing your breathing exercises, doing your hissing, that doesn't actually create a lot of volume, and yet it has a huge impact. How do you pace yourself for a long day of talking ahead? Well, I can tell you that for today, I knew I was going to be talking with you all for an hour, and so I didn't talk on the phone this morning. I drank a lot of water. I did a vocal warm up myself. I think you have to kind of know what you have ahead. And I used to teach in a classroom. I used to teach high school, and that is a lot of talking. So I would count the rests. I would care for my instrument. I would take breaks when I could. I would focus on optimizing my resonance so that I would let the voice project for me rather than trying to strain and push to project. Loud concerts, I wear earplugs. Whether I'm attending them or singing in them, I wear earplugs so that I don't feel tempted to compete. Yeah.
That was a great question, Sarah. That was my question. I was wondering how you prep yourself when you've got a lot of different things going on. So that's good timing from Sarah there. I think that's a perfect question to for us to wrap. So I want to say again, Gina, thank you for joining us. Everyone, thank you so much for your participation. Reminder that we'll be sending out the recording to this and all of those links that Gina shared on the slides, I will include in the post of an email as well. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to those links or to us at the Alumni Association. We appreciate you being here, everyone. Go
Thank you so
Cats!
much. Go Cats.